To understand the medieval world, a world so different from our own, we must delve into its core beliefs and societal structures. It was a time of stark contrasts, where faith and fear walked hand in hand, and life was often a precarious balance between survival and succumbing to the harsh realities of the era. You must first understand its relationship with pain. Pain, in its many forms, permeated every facet of medieval existence, shaping laws, beliefs, and the very fabric of daily life. It was a constant companion, an ever-present threat, and a tool wielded by those in power. Life was hard, short, and often brutal. From the back-breaking labor in the fields to the constant threat of disease, the average person endured hardships that are difficult for us to imagine today. Disease, famine, and violence were constant threats, looming over every village and castle. The spectre of death was never far away, and suffering was an accepted part of life. In this world, pain was both a daily reality and a tool of justice. The legal system, often arbitrary and cruel by modern standards, relied heavily on physical punishment to maintain order and extract confessions. Torture wasn't just for confessions, it was a public warning, a demonstration of authority. The spectacle of suffering served to remind everyone of the consequences of defying the established order. Justice was a patchwork of customs and decrees, often varying from region to region, with no forensic science, just oaths, testimony, and confessions. Evidence was often circumstantial, and the burden of proof rested heavily on the accused. To get a confession, authorities applied pressure, literally. Physical coercion was seen as a legitimate means of uncovering the truth. Pain was believed to reveal truth and cleanse the soul, a concept deeply rooted in the religious beliefs of the time, even if forced. The idea was that suffering could purify the spirit and lead to repentance. Imagine being accused of a crime, perhaps something as trivial as stealing a loaf of bread, dragged from your home to a dark cell without any explanation or recourse, not a courtroom. There was no presumption of innocence, no right to legal representation. Your interrogators were not lawyers, but guards or inquisitors, often driven by religious zeal or personal vendettas, demanding a confession, regardless of your innocence. They showed you the instruments, the tools of their trade, designed to inflict maximum pain and suffering: the rack, thumbscrews, branding irons. Each device had its own purpose, each designed to break the will of the accused. They calmly explained what would happen if you refused, detailing the excruciating pain that awaited you. For many, this was justice. Confess, endure pain, admit to the charges, whether true or false, and hope for redemption, both in this life and the next. Public punishments served as deterrents, a gruesome display intended to discourage others from committing similar crimes. Burnings, amputations, and executions, carried out in front of large crowds, were lessons for all, a stark reminder of the power of the authorities and the consequences of disobedience. The church and state reinforced their power, working in tandem to maintain social order and suppress dissent through these spectacles, using fear and intimidation as tools of control. The line between justice and cruelty was thin, often invisible, blurred by the prevailing beliefs and the harsh realities of the time. Suffering was seen as both punishment and purification, a means of atoning for sins and cleansing the soul. The community learned obedience through fear, witnessing the consequences of defying authority and internalizing the lessons of pain. The screams from dungeons and public squares, the cries of the condemned, were reminders of the cost of defiance, a constant warning to those who might consider challenging the established order. Pain was not just punishment. It was a tool for social control, a means of maintaining order and suppressing dissent. Confession under torture was seen as a step, however coerced, towards spiritual cleansing, a path to redemption through suffering. The spectacle of suffering kept the populace in line, reinforcing the power of the authorities and discouraging any thoughts of rebellion. Medieval justice was brutal, public, and absolute, a system designed to instill fear and maintain control. The threat of pain shaped every aspect of life, influencing behavior, beliefs, and social interactions. In this world, pain was both a sentence and a salvation, a constant reminder of human frailty and the hope for divine mercy. In the medieval mind, crime was not simply a breach of secular law, it was a sin against God, a transgression that threatened the very fabric of the divine order. It wasn't just a legal offense punishable by earthly authorities, but a spiritual failing with eternal consequences. The justice system therefore aimed not only to punish the body for its earthly deeds, but also to save the soul from eternal damnation. Confession was absolutely crucial. Without it, the soul was considered irrevocably damned, destined for the eternal fires of hell. It was the gateway to redemption. Trials by ordeal, involving acts like carrying hot iron across a certain distance or submersion in water, were seen as direct appeals to divine judgment, a way for God to intervene and reveal the truth. If wounds healed miraculously or the accused sank in the water, it was interpreted as a sign of innocence, a testament to God's favor. Conversely, festering wounds or floating in the water were considered undeniable proof of guilt, a rejection by the divine. To us, with our modern sensibilities, it seems incredibly cruel and arbitrary, a barbaric practice rooted in superstition, but to them it was a manifestation of God's will, a divinely ordained method for uncovering truth. The system, unfortunately, often presumed guilt from the outset rather than operating under the principle of presumed innocence. Accused individuals faced overwhelming odds stacked against them from the moment they were apprehended, including the use of anonymous witnesses, the denial of legal counsel to defend themselves, and blatant intimidation tactics. Torture was widely seen as a legitimate way to cut away the layers of sin and reveal the underlying truth. The underlying theory was that the innocent, sustained by their righteousness, could withstand unimaginable pain, while the guilty, burdened by their sins, would inevitably break under the pressure. In reality, of course, anyone, regardless of their guilt or innocence, would confess to absolutely anything to bring an end to the unbearable agony. As a result, false confessions were incredibly common. People readily admitted to acts of heresy, practicing witchcraft, or participating in elaborate conspiracies, all simply to stop the relentless torture. Ultimately, the entire process was less about uncovering genuine truth and far more about exerting control over the population. The justice system, in many ways, became a well-oiled machine designed for producing confessions regardless of their veracity rather than dispensing true justice. Pain became the accepted currency of truth, but the ultimate cost was all too often the irreversible loss of innocence. The medieval pursuit of confession, fueled by religious fervor and a desire for control, left behind a dark and enduring legacy of suffering. The system's stated goal, to save souls from eternal damnation, often ironically resulted in the destruction of countless lives in the here and now. The rack stands as perhaps the most infamous symbol, a stark representation of the brutality of medieval torture, a dark stain on the history of justice. It evokes images of suffering and despair. Its design was deceptively simple, a crude wooden frame yet brutally effective, featuring rollers often spiked at each end, designed for the sole purpose of stretching the victim's body beyond its natural limits. Each agonizing turn of the handle, meticulously controlled by the torturer, relentlessly pulled limbs in opposite directions, inching closer to the breaking point, causing excruciating pain that few could endure without confessing. Joints dislocated with sickening pops, ligaments snapped like frayed ropes, and cartilage tore, leaving the victim a shattered wreck. The rack was deliberately meant to maim, not kill, primarily used for extracting confessions, often forced and false, from those accused of serious crimes against the crown or the church. Guy Fawkes, the infamous conspirator behind the gunpowder plot, was famously broken by the rack within the Tower of London, a testament to its brutal effectiveness. Survivors, if they could even be called that, were often left crippled for life, their bodies permanently ruined, serving as grim warnings to others who might consider defying authority. The psychological trauma inflicted was often lifelong, leaving deep scars on the mind. The rack represented the state's ultimate show of power, a chilling demonstration of control over the human body. It stretched not just limbs to their breaking point, but also the limits of human endurance, both physical and mental. Confessions wrung from the rack, born of unimaginable agony, were often unreliable and coerced, but the spectacle, the public display of power, was designed to be unforgettable, instilling fear and obedience. The rack remains a chilling reminder, a dark artifact of a brutal past, of the horrific potential of pain as a tool of authority and oppression. The Iron Maiden, a human-shaped cabinet lined with spikes, is iconic but mostly myth. Its terrifying image was likely invented centuries after the Middle Ages to sensationalize medieval cruelty. The idea of being trapped and impaled taps into deep fears, but there's little evidence it was used in medieval times. The Iron Maiden of Nuremberg was built as a curiosity, not a real instrument of torture. Earlier devices focused on humiliation, not deadly spikes. The legend grew through folklore and propaganda, painting the past as barbaric. Real or not, the Iron Maiden symbolizes our darkest fears about human cruelty. It's a powerful reminder of how we imagine, and sometimes exaggerate, the horrors of history. Not all medieval punishments drew blood. Public humiliation was common for lesser crimes. Stocks and pillories were fixtures in every town, forcing offenders into uncomfortable, exposed positions. Crimes ranged from theft to cheating at cards. The real punishment was public shame. Neighbors mocked, spat, and threw garbage. Humiliation could ruin reputations and mark people as outcasts. Sometimes punishments escalated, ears nailed to the pillory, or crowds turning violent. The community enforced social norms through these spectacles. Fear of disgrace was a powerful deterrent. The stocks and pillory made justice a public affair, reinforcing order through collective participation. Even minor offenses became lessons for all. Public shaming was as much about control as correction. The breaking wheel, or Catherine wheel, was reserved for the worst crimes: murder, treason. It was a slow, agonizing execution meant to terrify the public. The condemned was tied down, limbs shattered with an iron bar, then woven through the spokes of a wheel. The broken body was hoisted up, left to die from shock, blood loss, or exposure. Birds would sometimes feed on the living victim. The spectacle could last days, serving as a gruesome warning. The wheel's name comes from St. Catherine, who, legend says, miraculously broke the device. For most, there was no miracle, just pain and death. The breaking wheel was the apex of punitive cruelty. It obliterated the body and terrified the community. Its legacy is a testament to the extremes of medieval justice. The pear of anguish was a metal device inserted into the mouth or other orifices, then expanded to tear tissue. Its use was rare and its history debated, but it symbolizes the era's obsession with fitting punishment to crime. The pain was unimaginable, the damage catastrophic. It targeted blasphemers, adulterers, and others deemed sinful. Whether widely used or not, it represents a particularly sadistic form of punishment. The device was not for interrogation, but for mutilation and terror. The pear of anguish is a chilling example of punitive creativity. It stands as a symbol of the dark extremes of retributive justice. Torture and execution were public events, part theatre, part warning. Crowds gathered, children watched, and vendors sold food. The spectacle reinforced authority and kept people in line through fear. For the condemned, public shame was an added torment. Yet a brave confession could win admiration and offer redemption. The community's participation normalized brutality and reinforced shared values. Public suffering drew a line between the righteous and the damned. These rituals bound society together through fear and spectacle. Violence became entertainment, shaping the collective psyche. The legacy of public punishment lingers in our fascination with justice and cruelty. The end of judicial torture was gradual, driven by new ideas and reforms. The Enlightenment challenged old beliefs. Thinkers like Beccaria argued for rational, humane justice. Torture was seen as cruel and unreliable. Legal systems evolved. Evidence, witnesses, and professional police replaced forced confessions. Punishment moved from public spectacle to private prisons. The legacy of medieval cruelty shaped modern human rights and justice. Remembering these horrors reminds us why we reject torture today. The past's pain is a warning, never to be repeated.